This is IBM Museum. I will provide a link to an excellent video of EEV Blog, his teardown of the IBM PS2 L40SX. And that's the unit I'm working with today on this video. And the still image shows that backup battery, and that provides a power source to the CMOS RAM for the storage of the system configuration. I've gone through today and just replaced that backup battery, and I'm going to go through and power on my L40SX to go through and configure it from the reference diskette in this image. Even though it's a non-microchannel model, it has a model number below 50, it does have what is identified as a reference diskette. And we'll go through, I'm going to have the system configure itself, and then I'll go through and actually pause the video at one point to pull power and to just make sure that it doesn't have any other source other than that fresh battery that I've put in to store the CMOS RAM contents, and then unpause the video as I go through and power it up again, and we shouldn't see any errors on that second power up. It is going through and reading from the reference diskette right now. We've got a little bit of the cover off, and that's the reason why we hear a little bit more of the swish, swish, swish of the diskette drive running. Okay, and as it shows there, it is a reference diskette. The model is kind of clipped off the right-hand side with the video capture I have, but let's go ahead and press the enter key. We're going to see the error that it flagged on startup. Okay, and backup battery error. This error appears if, and we have the center selection there, the backup battery was just installed for this scenario. So I'm pressing F8 and then pressing enter. Now the L40SX is a little bit odd that it goes through this in the sequence where it prompts if you want to make a backup of the reference diskette. And I'm not sure why it throws this in this particular sequence, but I'm going to go ahead and press escape is the way to bypass that. You'd press enter if you wanted to go through and do that. And it is interesting that in this sequence, and this is a little bit different from the microchannel systems, to where it wants to run the automatic configuration first, and then when it reboots, it goes through and still gives the error for the time and date not being set. So the L40 is a little bit different, that it goes through and tells you to set the time and date first. Okay. Okay. Time and date have been updated, and it's running automatic configuration. Okay, automatic configuration is complete. Let's go ahead and press the enter key. I'm going to go ahead and eject the reference diskette. And it's going through and counting through the RAM. And this system actually has 18 megabyte installed. It's got, in both of the SIM sockets, it's got an 8 megabyte module in each, giving 16 megabyte. Plus there's 2 megabyte that's on the system planar. So that makes up 18 megabyte. And it's interesting that this system, and it's based on a Western Digital chipset, goes through and that extra 2 megabyte. And in this case, it's a 386SX CPU and 24 bits of address lines. So it's only able to address 16 megabyte maximum as that memory. But the L40SX has this expanded memory manager on the reference diskette. You go through and install it, and it can go through and run that remaining 2 megabyte as expanded memory. So nice little feature of this. But as I say, I'm going to go through and I'm going to pause the video. I'm going to go ahead and power the system off. I'm going to pull power from it. We're going to wait a few minutes, and then I'll be back and unpause the video. Okay, we're back after we've gone through and had the power pulled. We're plugged back in now. I'm going to power the system back on here. And I don't have the reference diskette in the drive. This should go through and boot to the hard drive without any complaints. It's actually a laptop IDE drive on the L40SX, and that's what the L means in the model number, is it's a laptop. And as I say, it's based on the ISA bus. It does have an option that is possible to connect up to the system called the communications cartridge, and you could run a small specific set of ISA adapters in there, and it's only the 8-bit bus that's on that communications cartridge, even though it's a 386SX that normally would have a full ISA bus, have a 16-bit data bus as well. But the communication cartridge is only for running a small number of specified adapters, and like a token ring adapter, amazingly, to have network support, or some other card like a serial card or something like that, that IBM just had a limited number of adapters that were able to run that slot. Now, I want to run through a utility that is most of the aspect of the PS2, where it's a program called PS2.EXE. And that's included on the reference diskette. And the thought is, just like the memory, that expanded memory manager, you copy it over to the hard drive of the system. Now, point it on the command line, and you can pass commands to this utility from the command line. And it's very wide range of commands that this does. And I'm putting the question mark after that just to get a kind of a listing of what the program does here. The various things that you can go through, and within brackets, that's considered an option, an optional word that you can include. But these are all the composition of the what you put on the command line or have in a batch file to run through on this. Now, as you saw from the video, I mean, we're seeing a video capture of the system on the screen here. And the reason for that, and normally that would be presented on the LCD screen of the laptop, but it does have a VGA connection. And of course, it only runs one or the other. And this PS2 utility actually controls a little bit of that as well. But if you do have a VGA cable connected in or monitor connected in on power up, the L40SX is smart enough to know that you want the video to go to that external display and to just blank the internal LCD screen. So that's the reason we're able to display right from the boot up and everything else of having that on the video capture here. And it just makes it to where I have to have this a little bit closer in. The L40SX doesn't support an external keyboard, just a mouse. And then they have a keypad that goes through and can be connected, but that's just a numerical keypad. And I'll probably feature that or have a picture in a later video as I go through and cover this model as well. Now, as I mentioned, I'll link the EEV blog video in the description, because he goes through, and it's a very long video, but it's and 6 years ago in this case, but he goes through and a real comprehensive look. You get to see about the unit I'm talking about and see a lot of the internals to it. And then I'll also, of course, go through and link like Louis Olin's page on that. And me and William Walsh have worked extensively on looking at a lot of the things to the L40SX as well. It's kind of a unique little system. And as I say, most of it, the use of the functionality unit is controlled through this little PS2 utility. So we have where we can go through, starting from the top, we can have the audio on or off. We can go through for auto battery performance, or, as whether it goes open-ended, a little bit more performance mode, a little bit more power draw, or that we are interested in conserving the battery power a little bit more. The automatic shutdown of the disk after so many minutes. The display map, whether we want color or monochrome. And of course, the LCD screen is just monochrome, but we could control that on the external screen of whether we see video in color or monochrome. The keyboard click, on or off. And this unit actually has where a speaker is close to the keyboard and actually gives a click as you type in keys. Kind of neat. And of course, it's off by default. The keyboard speed, whether it's fast, medium, or slow, depending on your typing. And then as I say, the ability to switch between the LCD or CRT, the length of time that we go through for the LCD powering down after so many minutes, or dimming. And basically then if you just press a space bar, of course it undims the display. If it had gone through and it powers down the hard drive to conserve power, it would go through and spin the hard drive up as you are trying to run commands. But it is conserving that battery power. And the L40SX is a laptop. I mean, it does have a NiCad battery pack to it, although those typically expire pretty quick. And mine that I pulled out of this unit was ugly. It was bulging, cracked, putting that corrosive white powder over everything. And I cleaned up the mess of that. I'm gonna have to work with a little bit with that battery compartment and come up with a battery that I can put in there, combine my own NiCad cells or something like that to get a working battery on this unit again, to get that functionality back. But on Louis Olin's page, there's a little bit on going through and making battery packs and things like that. So as I say, I'll link that page. Let's go through and resume to where the low battery alarm. And of course, in this case, with me not having a battery on this, that alarm would not really go. Now, the next one is I'm talking about where that PS2 set, and then it's got manual 20, 10, or 5. And This is the speed of the CPU, the clock speed. And normally that's a 386SX 20 megahertz. But it's one of those unique models with the Western Digital chipset you can go through and you can set to run at 10 megahertz or even 5 megahertz. Basically, there are some programs that are time sensitive, or they were used to running on the older IBM XTs or something like that, to kind of scale back to that. I don't know if it would necessarily, the L40SX is not necessarily a gaming system, but that would be the thought, that running maybe an older game of that extremely old vintage or something like that, maybe. Just one of the sayings that you can do, and it's a really bit unique in this case for the L40SX model. We have turning the modem off or on. I do have the modem in there, that modem option. There's a little board that you put in there, and it's on a lot of the L40SX. The other rare option is just a separate serial port board that goes in the same place. Okay, and then we have to where we can set the normal foreground, background colors, or even go through a reverse display on the LCD. And that's just for that maybe a little bit higher contrast or ability to see the screen a little bit better. Now, the L40SX was viewed as a replacement for the PC convertible. We've seen that with the earlier videos I've done. You can always go back and view that video as well. But it's just viewed as a later version of that PC convertible style, where the laptops were finally coming out, clamshell laptops, and this was IBM's one of the first attempts at that clamshell laptop. It is very similar to there's the CL57SX, which is a microchannel based system, and it's black versus the beige of the L40SX, but and that led into the ThinkPads later on. But these are some of the first clamshell laptops that IBM developed. So next up we have the PS2 off, and that's just going through and immediately entering that suspend mode. And then PS2 on at XX time. And so you can go through and put that command in there before you would suspend it, to where it comes back on at a certain time to resume from that suspend mode. And then turning the parallel port off or on. And then lastly, for the command line options there, showing power off in XX minutes. So saying that to the system to power down, and the power switch would still be on effectively, but it would turn the unit off after the specified amount of time. So let's go ahead and press the space bar. We get back to the command line, and I also want to show, if you just do PS2 without any command line switches, it goes through and it has this interactive mode as well, and going through and displaying things up on the screen, the same sort of thing that you get the command line, or even a little bit more in this case. And it's in the format just like a reference diskette would be. You've got the same keys to go through and move between screens, or exit the utility, or going through and setting some of these different things. Okay, so we go F8 to the other screen, and just slightly different order, the identical functions grouped together. But this interactive method is it's just one of those features that it's a little bit unique. There's not really many other PS2 models. And there's models like the CL57SX did have, and in that case, the CL means color laptop. It actually had a color screen to it. There's other utilities of that. I mean, it had its own PS2 utility that did a little bit different things. Sometimes some of the close features, but and then the N51 and there's two models of that, the N51SX and N51SLC, that they were notebook systems, and those are also based on microchannel bus ultimately inside. And they also had a PS2 utility that could be run for them as well. And the N in that case means notebook. And they were starting to get into the look of what the ThinkPad series had from there, what it looked like. So that's just an overview of this PS2 utility. We've gone through to where my L40SX is not giving me that error about the battery backup. I can go through and, if not running on battery power, but I can go through and plug it in somewhere, run it off that wall transformer. It does use the same power supply as what the convertible uses as well. I think it's even a 12 volt AC adapter that is used in that case. And so it has that similarity with the convertible as well. But I'm not going to get that battery backup error anymore if I take this to a place, plug it in, and power it up. So that's all I have for this video. If you do like it, please click on that like button. Please subscribe to my channel. But that's all I have for now. This is IBM Museum. Thank you.